Imagine an elderly couple, two people who have spent practically their whole lives together through thick and thin, and now, in the final stage of their lives, they patiently await the arrival of divine enlightenment. However, they find a golden apple that, when they eat it, rejuvenates them back to the day they first fell in love. This is the story of the Sailos, Grandma Ai Ani, and Grandpa Shuso, who, like every morning, work in their field, reminiscing about the days when they were young. Grandparents lived in a different time, working their whole lives to survive. Grandma finds joy with her husband. In order to survive, they had to work practically their entire lives to the point where they couldn't even have their honeymoon. After getting married, Grandma doesn't worry much about what could have been, since she finds joy and happiness just being by her husband's side and being able to talk with him. All these memories lead them to visit their family's apple tree, since on their wedding day, they planted an apple tree that has been growing and taking root ever since, just like their relationship. This apple tree represents the durability of their promise. However, the poor trees suffered a break due to a natural disaster. A strong, gusty wind almost swept away their promise of eternal love. Thank goodness the apple tree was able to survive such adversities, as Grandpa put it back in place, and with the help of a bandage, he secured the remaining parts. And it seems to have worked because the tree is still alive. In fact, she's so full of life that Grandma notices there's a golden apple in its branches. Grandpa regrets not giving Grandma the life she wanted. He sees his wrinkles gone. He is young again. Seeing Grandma also rejuvenated, he thinks of making up for lost time. Their granddaughter Mino visits. He sees rejuvenated Grandma, and Grandpa wants to make up for lost time. Granddaughter Mino visits, surprised by their youthful energy. Later, their granddaughter Mino comes to visit. She doesn't see it coming, but her grandparents are back to their newlywed years. Nino doesn't seem to understand anything, but he quickly adapts. She actually likes this buff and muscular version of her grandpa even more, and when she asks Grandma to lend him to her, she won't let anyone steal her man, not even her granddaughter. When Nino gets home, she tells her dad that her grandparents are young again, but he thinks she's joking. Their daughter always had a strange taste for handsome guys and wanted her grandpa to dress like a male idol. At the park, the elders have organized a cricket game, and as the Saidos do not appear, they fear the worst. At their age, an absence of just a few months can be a big scare, and even more so as they heard that Grandma Ayani had health complications, but nothing could be further from the truth, since the Saito family returned and are stealing the glances of all the grandmothers. The old folks are jealous. Grandma Ayani offers tea, making the men nervous. It's been years since a young lady spoke to them, and they spill coffee. Grandma cleans up, stepping back as an old man nearly has a heart attack. Grandpa Shuso last saw his son Yoshiaki during an argument about moving in, as Grandpa can't live alone or handle countryside chores anymore. There's no problem since Grandma is ready to clean them up, and thank goodness she stepped back a bit because the old man was about to have a heart attack. Grandpa Shuso last saw his son Yoshiaki during an argument about moving in with them. His father insists on staying due to family tradition and ancestral cultivation. Grandma is cooking with her sister-in-law Kid, Nino's mom, and neither has a say because they are women. His father insists on staying because it's been the tradition in their family for many years. This land was cultivated by their ancestors and needs to continue the line of succession. Grandma is cooking with her sister-in-law Kid, Nino's mom, and neither of them has a say in this discussion, and that's because they're women, and honestly, neither of them really cares. The next day, Kid arrives with some ingredients for dinner and meets Grandpa. Seeing him makes her nervous. When the family gathers, Yoshiaki asks why she was playing with Grandpa like they were dating, but Mino was just being affectionate. Grandma has a bad feeling about it. especially since both mother and daughter are fans of muscular and attractive idols. When the whole family gathers together, Yoshiko asks his daughter why she was playing at being a couple with her grandfather, and the fact is that Mino was just being affectionate with her grandfather and he knew she was playing. When he asks his mom, she makes excuses, saying he had to see it himself. She gets jealous of her daughter for being close to Grandpa. Grandpa gets slapped for being flirty and his son's family meets. A relationship like that wouldn't have a future, and it seems like she took it way too seriously. Grandpa gets slapped for being flirty and his son's family leaves. Before leaving, Grandma tells him not to push himself too hard. He's doing a great job, and it's good to let him know that every now and then. With a few pats on the head, he shows his affection just like when she was a little kid. His granddaughter also wants some affection, and when they leave, Grandma has to have a serious talk with her husband. The sports festival is coming up, and the elderly are worried because they don't have anyone to represent them. Most of the children went to other schools, and only the elderly remain. The neighbors win as Shuso shows up, becoming hope for the festival. Titamichi representatives participate, but suddenly Shuso shows up with a ripped body, and the elderly see him as a glimmer of hope for the Yuzen Sports Festival. The event has arrived, and the representatives from Titamichi have come to participate. Their reinforcements are the grandsons of Old Man Igarashi, Shoyuda, and Daiki, both high-performance athletes, at their respective schools. The old man is feeling confident because all his rivals are over 50 years old. But the neighbors from Minamayamachi have a secret weapon. The Seidel couple is coming to save them. Grandpa and Grandma are ready to participate, and the first event is tug of war. They're both pretty evenly matched, even though Grandpa is giving it his all. But if they keep this up, they could lose. At that moment, an elderly woman hands Grandma the pom-poms and cheers her on a bit. Grandpa taps into the ancestral strength of an old farmer and ends up winning. Now Grandma Ayane has found another way to please her husband. The second test is the three-legged race, where the Higurashi brothers take the lead. They've known each other for over 10 years, making coordination easy. During Miss Sato's turn, they run as. They have a technique, rhythm, and experience worthy of couples over 70 years old. Grandpa knows exactly how Grandma moves, and she's happy because she keeps up with his pace. Next up is the tomato toss and the giant ball race, where the Tutamachi team ends up getting humiliated. At lunchtime, the brothers have a lot to learn, and Grandpa can't believe the beating they got. Shuso stole Mia's heart 70 years ago, and today he took the victory and glory away from his grandkids. Next year will change. Ayane feeds them. Grandpa is busy with his fans, and she prepared a lot of food to share. It's only been 3 years since his wife passed away, and his grandkids look a lot like him. In fact, they're just like him when he proposed. He tells them not to give up because with a lot of training and effort, they can win next year. Grandma is out of Grandpa Igarashi's league, so she turned him down. Shoyuja delivers a message to Miss Saito house, and Mino greets him. She invites him in, and he accepts. Mino treats him kindly. She still wants to talk. Apparently, Mino is a pretty popular girl at school and treats him quite kindly, as if he were a normal person. He can't look her in the eye, so he plays with his phone, but the girl wants to talk to him anyway. All of this was being watched by his grandparents and his mom, who was really nervous because she still doesn't want her daughter to get married. Grandma reassures her, but Grandpa is eager to have grandkids. After a while, Grandpa chats with Shoyuda and seems quite friendly. On the other hand, Peve and Grandma are staring at him intently. Mino introduces Shoyuda as a sports whiz and a really smart guy, and since they're in the same class, Shoyuda gets nervous. Tease and Grandma continue to gossip, and Grandpa is about to ask her if she likes anyone, but Grandma stops him. Shoyuda has to leave because it's getting late, and Mino is pretty sad because she wanted to be alone with him. Grandpa is the only one who noticed, and Shoyuda wants to go back to his Saito house. A few days later, The grandparents chat with Mino because she wants to know their love story, and Grandma Ayani tells her that she was the one who proposed. Fortunately, they were able to marry for love, since it turns out that long ago when all this was countryside, families arranged marriages and you couldn't choose who to marry. Grandpa had already been paired with the daughter of a friend of his father's, and since they were both in love, he had to fight to defend his relationship with his beloved. Grandma told the girl she'd fight for her man, scaring her off. Grandma confidently assures no one will take her man. Mino is amazed and wants her grandmother to show her how she spoke to the other girl. Grandpa eagerly awaits the demonstration, while Grandma reassures her granddaughter that no one will take her man. After breakfast, they are near the study. Grandpa never attended high school due to field work, unlike Grandma, who briefly went to a girls' school before returning to the fields due to conflicts where she met a young man. Now, despite the city's attractions, Grandma prefers the countryside with her husband. Shirori visits again, bringing a video game console. Shozone now in the city. Every day there are more eye-catching activities and buildings than before, but Grandma prefers to stay in the countryside with her lifelong husband. Shirori came to visit the grandparents once again, and this time she brought a video game console. Back in his day, Grandpa used to play with marbles and tops, but he's willing to give the current games a shot. For now, he doesn't really understand much about the zombie game, but his granddaughter is impressed because they only shoot for headshot. The grandparents took out all the enemies, and by the next day, they had unlocked all the achievements and finished the game. In the afternoon, Mino runs into Shirori, and her cousin is really affectionate with her. In the afternoon, Shirori can't stand her, even though she remembers that in their childhood they used to play together in the snow. Mino knows she's at her grandparents' house because, even if it doesn't seem like it, she loves them a lot, but Shirori won't admit it. She says it's not a big deal, but Grandpa Shuso was listening. He's completely sad because his granddaughter hates him, and Shirori has to tell him how much she loves him to make him feel better. At night, in another dream, Grandpa finds himself with the hourglass trying to sleep. He thinks about his love for his wife and their activities since her health improved. They could vacation at the beach, but the hourglass flips, and he wakes up old again. He worries his wife won't want to travel with him because of appearances. However, Grandma reminds him that the Shuso she loves doesn't depend on age. Grandpa thinks that his wife won't want to travel with him anymore because it would look bad in front of people. However, Grandma reminds him that the Shuso she fell in love with and has spent her whole life with doesn't depend on age. Although they are young again, until a few days ago they were a happy old couple, and Grandpa is feeling better, as they were planning to go on a trip to Utari. No matter how it looks, the plans are still on. When they go to the doctor, their son tells them that Grandpa is in great health. In fact, he's really buff, so Grandma doesn't notice the changes. The tests say that his illness hasn't come back, but now she is much younger than Grandpa, and if things keep going this way, she'll watch her loved ones pass by without being able to do anything, feeling sad and alone until the end. Yoshiaki's family visits and notices Grandpa's age. His son tests his strength, and after losing, Grandpa wins a trip to Tammy, making Grandma proud. As winter nears, they buy a snow shovel, but their age. As winter approaches, Grandpa and Grandma go to buy a snow shovel, but their age difference is so noticeable that people look at them strangely. Grandpa wants to avoid this by stepping away from her a bit, but Grandma would never deny her husband. In fact, when an employee mistakes them for Grandpa and granddaughter, Grandma Ayani tells him that they are married because she doesn't care what others say as long as she's with her beloved Grandpa. Being old is a problem since you can't eat the daifuku they bought for fear of getting diabetes. The grandfather tells his wife that she can eat them safely, but the grandmother refuses because it would be too cruel to eat them in front of him. So at night, when he's asleep, Grandma sneaks into the kitchen to eat a little dessert, but Grandpa finds her out right away and tells her it's okay for her to eat them if she likes them so much. because despite her diabetes, seeing her happy is her best medicine and they both enjoy it together. Grandma wasn't always happy. When she was young, her parents died. She moved in with relatives, but felt out of place due to their teasing. She spent afternoons alone until a young man brought her food and company. She realized Grandpa was a simple country boy and wondered if he could win her heart. He did. All she had left was to work and spend her afternoons alone in a sanctuary until one day a young man who was passing by found her and fed her, and day after day he returned to keep her company. Back then, Grandma immediately realized that Grandpa was just a simple country boy, and she wondered if he would be able to win her heart, and the truth is, he did. Another night, and Grandpa dreamed again of the hourglass, and this time he knows what to do. He just needs to flip it over. But deep down, he realizes that the sand is spilling out of the hourglass. When she wakes up, Grandma is no longer surprised by her appearance, but she's still scared because if they've become young again, they might not age normally and will watch their children's lives pass by. However, Grandpa calms her down, saying that even though they are young, their time is still passing, and it's not a lot of sand, to be honest. And even so, Grandpa will be with her until the last of their days. The students walk through the apple orchard to see Grandma as usual, dreaming of one day going to the city to have luxury cars, when suddenly Grandma approaches them because they are going to spray for pests, and it's not safe for them to pass through there for the rest of the week. Behind her comes Grandpa, driving a sprayer that looks cooler than the cars in the city. Sometime later, old Higurashi asked his grandson for help to clean the attic, and he thought it would be a great idea to bring Grandpa Shozo, his biggest rival. While they're cleaning, he finds a ton of antiques that could be worth a fortune, but the old man wants to throw everything away so it won't be a burden for his descendants. Until he comes across a black trunk. That lost trunk belongs to Higurashi's late wife and holds all her personal belongings. The old man asks for a moment alone with his beloved while Shoyuta calls in some experts to check out the antiques. Since Higurashi's kids are all in the city, he's planning to demolish the house and get rid of the problems. But his grandson tells Grandpa that he could stay and live in the village. It's the least he can do for the lands that raised him. He's not sure what the future holds, but he wants all of his family's legacy to remain intact. Upon hearing this, old Higurashi cancels the demolition, and both grandparents cry because he is such a good grandson. On the other hand, Shiori was studying until she lost motivation since even her grandparents weren't standout students. But in that same library was her grandpa, who started studying everything about high school because he had to drop out back in the day to support his family, 2000 yen. This inspires her granddaughter, and she ends up among the top 10 students in her class. At Mino's school, the rumor about the grandparents who rejuvenated has already spread, but she has to say she knows nothing about it since it could get her into trouble. All those worries make her talk to Shoyuta, and she thanks him for being so understanding. Her grandpa has spoken very highly of him, and in the future, she would like to be married just like her grandparents. Shoyuta has to step out to the bathroom for a moment because he's really nervous, but Mino isn't ruling out the possibility of marrying him. The cultural festival is coming up, and the grandparents will be able to visit Mino at school. Grandma is so excited that she can't sleep, and when the day comes, Grandma is very happy, but so many children approach her and dirty her clothes. She goes to change, and Grandpa remembers his wife's school days and her many proposals. In her all-girls school, she studied arts and was unreachable. Grandpa sees her in a school uniform. Grandma jokingly rejects Grandpa, but she could never do that to her husband of many years. When Grandpa sees her, they lend her a high school uniform as if they were schoolmates. Grandma jokes with Grandpa. They visit an empty maid cafe. Grandma sees Grandpa's friends in photos. They also go to a maid cafe, but it's practically empty since a professional ramen stand has opened in another room, and Grandma comes up with an idea to bring more girls to the place. Well, grannies, since Grandpa Shuso dressed up as a butler, and now there are lines of them waiting. When they finish, Grandma goes to look at the photos of the former students and notices that several of Grandpa's Grandpa's friends were there. If she had kept studying, she probably would have been in the picture too, but her father told her she had to work to maintain the family land. Still, she doesn't regret anything because thanks to that, she got to meet him and she's very happy by his side. Night is approaching and the bonfire dance is just around the corner. Shoyudo wants to invite Mino, but Grandma won't leave her side, so Grandpa Shuso has to help him out. He takes Grandma home so Shoyuga can invite Mino to dance at the festival. In Grandma's dreams, going back to school made her feel strange, like she was becoming the person she used to be, but she doesn't think much of it. He has to turn the clock around because they need to do some paperwork, but he slips and ends up breaking it. The next day, Grandpa wakes up but realizes that Grandma has her hair down, doesn't recognize the date or the things in their house, and she doesn't remember that she has a husband. When Grandpa talks to her a bit, he realizes that her memory has also rejuvenated and has gone back to just before they met. Grandma has a lot of doubts because she can't believe she's been married for so long to someone she barely knows now, and on top of that, it was her who proposed to him. So to test Grandpa, Ayane tells him that he'll have to fall in love with her all over again. First things first, and since Grandpa doesn't know much, they have to eat leftovers from the day before. But to Ayane, the taste of the rice and even the spices seem like the most delicious thing in the world. When they finish, Grandpa helps her with the dishes, but she finds it strange that the man of the house is doing the housework. Actually, Grandpa isn't very good at cooking, but he helps Grandma with everything else. They've always had a reciprocal relationship since Grandma helps him too. In the apple orchard, Grandpa tries to explain to her how they rejuvenated, but it's probably better to explain it to her the next day, since when she sleeps, she goes back to being young like before. Even with that look, Ayane can't recognize him, but deep down, she can feel a special connection with him. Grandpa tries to help her remember a bit about her family, so he shows her pictures of Yoshiaki and her granddaughter, but she still can't recall anything. At that moment, Nino arrives because it turns out she's coming to visit with her family today. Ayane can't let her son worry, so she'll pretend to be Grandma this time, but since she keeps talking strangely, Grandpa has to explain that she's been like this since the school festival, and for now, no one suspects a thing. When it's time to cook, Grandma doesn't remember how to do it since the servants used to prepare the meals. Grandpa tries to help her make a delicious curry, and even though it turned out a bit horrible, Ayane is surprised that Grandma actually learned to cook because Ayane always thought she would never get married. After dinner, Yoshiaki tells his parents that the company he works for is about to go under. No matter how hard he tries, it's just not enough, so he has to throw himself completely into his job. Seeing that her son needs some advice, Ayane tells him not to push himself so hard. There are people in the world who can take advantage of others' kindness, and if he needs help, he can ask for it. Yoshiaki ends up getting a bit tipsy, complaining about his boss, but deep down he realizes that she's not his mother. She looks more like the one he had when he was a kid, and maybe Ayane isn't as good as Grandma. Grandpa takes her to the shrine. Ayane suggests recalling her love. Confession. Grandpa recounts, revealing Grandma approached him, but when Grandpa starts to recount the story, it turns out that it was Grandma who approached him and took his hand, but she thinks that's a lie. She would never have done that. It's way too embarrassing. So they have a really awkward ride home. After all that, Ayane goes to visit her sister Tsuru, since she has memories of her when she was little, although the passage of time has made it so that now she can only remember her mother. At some point, she feels so lonely and sad that seeing her grandfather by her side relaxes her. Maybe, just maybe, at some point, she chose him for all the support he represented without needing to say a word. But in reality, Grandpa just wanted to go to the bathroom. Since they were little, Tsuru always taught her how to play the piano, so now it's Grandma's turn. He sits next to her, and they start playing, bringing her sister back to reality for a moment as she accompanies her on the piano. Even though she doesn't recognize her, Tsuru admires that she can play the piano too, while Ayane can't. She can't hold back her tears. Weeks go by, and Grandma still can't regain her memory. Grandpa left her alone because he had to go to a meeting leaving with the committee, and so far, she hasn't fallen in love with him. Grandpa doesn't try hard to win her over, but still, she doesn't feel at ease because just his presence is enough for her. The fact that she can't be the grandma who recognizes her and has been by her side for so long doesn't make her happy. Little by little, her memories come back, like when she confessed her feelings to Shozo almost by accident. Since then, her family always opposed their relationship, and her parents forbade them from seeing each other again. Shuso fought with his family, staying together despite Grandma's illnesses. Grandpa knew he needed more moments with her. Grandma doesn't want. Even so, Grandpa always kept in mind that to solve all adversities, he only had to create many more happy moments at his side. The grandmother no longer wants to fall in love again. In fact, she wants to do it again as before, and while her hair turns gray again, with it her memories return and she remembers once again the life she had with her grandfather. Since they are about to go on a trip, Mino asked Shoyuta for help to guide their grandparents and have meet. From what they remember, the train used to take over 6 hours and had to be paid for with 2000 diem watermelon. But in reality, there are now bullet trains, technology, and many other things that have changed since then. Shoyuta thinks he's not the right person for the job, but they don't have any other family in Tokyo who has the time. Their other kids and family living there must be too busy, and since they need someone they can trust, they ask Shoyuta to be their personal guide so he can also have a date with me. Shoyuta agrees to join the family, but they must ask Grandpa for permission. Old Higurashi is hesitant to let his grandson leave with his enemy, but Mino arrives. Grandpa is relieved. His grandson brought a girl home, fearing he was going to the other side. He asks Mino to care for him and awaits the wedding day. Meanwhile, Grandma buys candied sweet potatoes, her favorite. He asks Nino to take care of him and says he'll be waiting until the wedding day. Meanwhile, Grandma was buying some candied sweet potatoes to satisfy her hunger since they're her favorites. Her friend Kacho's stand prepares them as delicious as usual, but with so few customers, she has no doubt that she will soon close her stand like the others. To help her precious friend, Grandma stands at the door, drawing people to come and buy from Grandma's beauty and the smell of the Eskimos. A long time ago, leaving his beloved village was just a dream for Grandpa, but now he is ready to leave with his wife. Shoyuta and Mino say goodbye to their father, and the future father-in-law just wants them to respect his daughter. They both get on the train as old folks, but they almost get on the wrong train along the way. They're really surprised by how fast they're going, but since there's nothing better to do, they'll both take a nap. When they wake up, they've turned young again, and they only got on as old folks to take advantage of the senior discount. On the other hand, Akemi, the daughter of the Saito family, gets a call from Yoshiaki letting her know that her parents will be visiting soon. Akemi is a bit confused, but she doesn't think much of it since she's currently dealing with a cold. She remembers that in her childhood, her mother took care of her, and when she sees her in front of her eyes, she's really confused. After a brief explanation, the grandparents tell their daughter everything they learned about Tokyo, but they're eager to see the rest of the family since Akemi hasn't been wasting any time. At that moment, his great-grandson Kusuke arrives, and when he sees him, he realizes that he looks just like his father. They have to explain again what happened, and the next day, everyone goes out shopping together, leaving their grandkids completely alone. While Grandma goes off to buy some sweets, Grandpa Shuso is looking for a farmer's belt, but the clerk tells him he has some better clothes he could try on. When Grandpa comes back, he realizes they've turned him into a model from an old movie, and on top of that, he's surrounded by other grandma. To make it up to her, they're going to get ice cream, where Grandpa made a special order just for his wife. Seeing her get so nervous and enjoy her ice cream so much made every penny he spent worth it. Shoyuta and Mino take the grandparents to a photo booth as they should have a souvenir to take home. Since they don't know how to use it properly, the grandkids will show them how it's done, and when the grandparents give it a try, they end up with a really classic style. Everyone heads back home, and Grandpa bought a few gifts for Kusuke. Child wanted new tops, Grandpa gave old ones. Grandpa wins. Child cries, Grandpa buys the toy. Still, to prove that classic never goes out of style, they will have a competition where the grandfather emerges victorious since his tops were made of lead. The little grandson starts crying, but to make him feel better, his grandfather buys him the toy he wanted so much. In the end, both of them end up very tired while the grandfather and his daughter wash the dishes. Akemi always felt bad because when she got married and started her own family, she thought she had left them behind, and she breaks down in tears remembering how much her mother loved her. It's completely normal since time passes and things have to change. Meanwhile, at the grandparents' house, Shirori went over to do her homework, but she forgot that the grandparents had gone on a trip. Remember, they had a hidden key for situations like this, and while she's doing her homework, she feels really lonely since she was so used to their warm and gentle presence. She is so depressed that she thinks about the little time they have left in this world, and it's inevitable that she'll miss them too much. Energy is passed to the grandparent. Continue the journey. Idol rep appears. Warned, they resist, but Grandpa prays his wife, she reciprocates. Leave rep confused. Reach Tammy, happy. Their grandkids warn them, so they try not to fall for his flattery. But Grandpa can't resist telling his wife she's beautiful, and she feels the same. They leave the representative, confused. Arriving at Tammy, they're thrilled. They take photos, and at the hotel, find it luxurious, all for beating their son in a contest. Grandpa is excited about the private bathroom, eager to catch up with Grandma. Grandma showers with Mino, hinting Grandpa to wait until the kids sleep. The grandpa is really excited because the room has a private bathroom, and he's waiting for the grandma to catch up on all the time they've missed. The grandma goes to take a shower with Mino and gives the grandpa a look, telling him to at least wait until the kids fall asleep. Dinner is ready, and everyone is enjoying the feast except for Shoyuta, who feels like he's interrupting his grandparents' honeymoon. Mino tells him none of this possible, and grandpa suggests a kansake toast. The kids cheer with juice, a Japanese pre-marriage tradition. At bedtime, Mino lets grandparents sleep together. She and Shoyuta have their own room, a secret. Grandpa sleeps deeply. They couldn't use the bathtub. It's time to sleep, and to help them feel more at ease, Mino let the grandpa and grandma sleep together, and now she has the room all to herself with Shoyuta, but it'll be a secret between them. In the old people's room, Grandpa falls deeply asleep, and in the end, they couldn't use the bathtub. On the other hand, Mino and Shoyuta are happy for their grandparents, and Mino would like to one day have a relationship with as much love as they do. They start pretending they're married, and when they call each other by name, they get so embarrassed that they just go to sleep. The grandma wants to sleep as she has no choice. She dreams of bathing with Mino. Motivated, she flips the hourglass, wakes up old, and misses her beach date. It's sunny, and she steals attention, but Grandpa, fit and pumped, challenges her to a lighthouse race. If she loses, she can't marry Mino. The grandma and granddaughter watches Grandpa, full of energy, humiliates her. The grandpa challenges her to a race to the lighthouse, and if she doesn't win, he might not let her marry Mino. The grandmother and her granddaughter watch them, and the grandfather has too much energy, so he ends up humiliating him. They can still enjoy the sun, but the grandma won't take off the dress the grandpa gave her. Even though she has a really nice swimsuit, she could never show that much skin because it would be way too embarrassing. The day is almost over and Grandpa couldn't see her bikini, although Grandma is confused since she has seen her many times as God brought her into the world. But for Grandpa it is not the same. It's time to go home, but before that, Mino realizes that her grandparents want to help her marry Shoyuta since she read online about the tradition of the 9-sip. When they get back to the hotel, Minu and Shoyuta play ping pong, but since they're so bad at it, the grandpa and grandma will show them how it's done, and they end up playing for over an hour without stopping. As a reward, the grandpa and grandma will take a bath together in their room, and for both of them, it's a dream come true to be together again in their new youth. The next day, everyone goes to the temple to pray and ask for their loved ones. Mino wants to get good grades on his exams, and Shoyuta wants to play soccer professionally. But really, behind Mino's wish, she secretly wanted to go on a trip with Shoyuta again. but it would be way too embarrassing to tell him. On the other hand, the grandmother realizes that the grandfather's wish was too simple, so when she turns it around, the old man only wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. And even if he died in the next life, he asked to meet again and repeat their love story until infinity. They continue on to the temple, where one can circle a sacred tree to obtain one more year of life. In Shuda's case, he notices that Mino has been looking at him a lot, and he doesn't want to walk around the tree too many times because he's doing fine health-wise for now. But he can also make another kind of wish if he wants, so he hopes that one day he can come back here with Mino, but as something more than just friends. He's about to take her hand and secure the Saito lineage, but that would be way too embarrassing. At night, Mino can't hold back her feelings for him, and while he's asleep, she kisses him on the forehead. Back in the village, Shiori is studying in the library and helps a young man who lost his ID. She realizes that he's researching rejuvenation, and when they talk, she finds out his name is Takahashi. I was studying inventory, researching about grandparents who become young again, because it's said that phenomena like that happen in the village every 100 years. When she asked Shiori, she says she studies medicine because she wants to help her grandparents. Since she was little, she noticed that they were suffering from health problems, and she wants to do everything she can to help them in the future. That noble and pure wish makes the grandpa sentimental, just like the grandma. Hours later, Yoshiaki is really worried about his daughter because Mino usually comes home really late and she won't tell him why. The grandparents understand that she is starting to grow up, but their son is really worried about all the dangers that girls face these days, and it would be even worse if she started rebelling against him. Grandma Annie calms him down, saying that Mino is a very well-mannered young lady, unlike him when he was her age, as he belonged to a gang and even ended up marrying the girl who always took care of him. So it's all good. They'll be fine. Later, the kids pass by Manzanar and wonder about the grandparents. Grandma says they were just tired. After Mino forgets her lunch, Grandma catches up. Shiori meets Takahashi again, feeling nervous. To put their minds at ease, the grandma tells them that they were just tired, and the next day they'll change back so the kids can stay happy. Anyway, after Mino forgot her lunch and the grandma had to catch up with her on a bike, Shiori runs into Takahashi again since he's still researching about the grandparent. But this time, she feels a bit nervous because he gives off a mature vibe. Even when he's at home with Mino, his cousin realizes that she's in love, but she still doesn't know why he's researching so much about his grandparents. And it turns out that Takahashi's grandparents also became young again. Grandma Zetsu and Grandpa Hajime one day found a golden apple, and the rest of the story, you already know it. The Takahashis find Shiori believes them due to a similar past event. Grandpa wants focus. Even though Grandpa wants them to focus more on studying, Satoshi has always kept that in mind, since ever since his parents separated, he's been doing everything he can to get ahead. Shiori invites them to her grandparents' house, and the four of them chat and drink as if they've known each other their whole lives. Shiori feels more at ease because they finally have people who understand them, and she hopes that one day they can have a relationship as long-lasting as that. Satoshi feels a bit embarrassed, and Shiori realizes that he referred to the two of them as a couple. When she was younger, Grandma Zetsu was working at a motel, but the customers got out of line, and Grandpa Hajime came from the other room to defend her. And that's how you met your mother. Well, actually only a husband like him could do that, but Grandma fights because Grandpa is also very attentive, strong and loving towards her. A bald guy will judge a strength test between Saito and Takahashi teams. Grandma steps out excitedly, eliminating both. Next, they eat dishes made by their wives. Failing to distinguish means losing. Grandpa wins by recognizing Grandma's dishes, tying the score. For the next challenge, they both have to eat a dish prepared by their wives, and if they can't tell the difference, they lose. The grandpa realizes that both dishes are from the grandma and ends up winning, so now they're both tied. The decisive test is coming up. The bald guy asks the grandmas why they even held the competition in the first place, since there's really no such thing as a best husband. They're both married and love their partners, and that should be enough. He tries every day to make his wife happy, even though he thinks he's the worst husband in the world. At that moment, the bald man's wife appears and everyone sits down to lunch, since in the end everything ended in a draw. Days later, Shiori asks the one to teach her how to cook, but she doesn't want her old dishes. She wants to make real food, fried chicken. Grandma is surprised because she doesn't normally eat it, but she actually wanted to learn how to cook it so that in the future she can feed her husband, and Grandma is very happy for her. Before going to bed, the Shozo family watches TV like they do every night, but this time they're showing a horror movie. The grandma gets so scared that she starts saying prayers and throwing salt to ward off spirits, and she's so frightened that she can't sleep well, so she ends up lying next to her husband all night. In the morning, the Takahimas sent an apple sapling as a gift for the grandparents, but they are already a little too old to be able to take care of it. Mino suggests they gift it to their grandparent. Inspired by someone she loves, she calls Shoyuta to help her plant the tree. Mino remembers when her grandparents got married, they planted an apple tree to seal their love. Shoyuta asks Mino if he can check on the apple tree occasionally, marking the start of their love story. Mino recalls her grandparents planted an apple tree when they married. Shoyuta asks if he can visit the tree, marking their love story's start. The grandparents' summer festival to thank the shrine gods is near. Shoyuta asks Mino if he can check the apple tree. This starts their love story, celebrated by the grandparent. The grandma has a yukata for Mino and asks her mom for one. Even though the summer festival is approaching, and the grandparents always organize a festival to thank the gods of their shrine, the grandma has a yukata for Mino, and she asked her mom for one for the grandma. So that same night, the grandma is alone because the grandpa went out drinking with the neighborhood council like he does every year. But this time, the grandma feels upset because she wants the grandpa by her side. At that moment, the grandpa shows up and they go out together to stroll around the festival. Grandpa gives sweets. Grandma accepts. They visit a toy stand. Grandpa helps win a teddy bear she loves. One often departs first, leaving the other alone. They arrive together at a stuffed animal stand where the grandma can't get one, so it's the grandpa's turn to step in. He uses his aim to shoot at the same time as the grandma, and they manage to win the teddy bear, which the grandma liked so much because it looked a lot like her husband. However, not everything is happiness. As in an elderly couple, there's always one who goes first, leaving the other to suffer in loneliness. The grandma doesn't have much time left. The grandpa had a similar dream, and he tells the grandma that he won't make it past this year. She reveals to him that he has 7 days left, and even though he knew this day would come, the grandpa can't help but feel so sad. All he can do is pray for a miracle. And at that moment, the shrine lights up, and they are both transported to the world of the gods. The grandma is asleep, and the goddess of the shrine heard the grandpa's call since they always kept her shrine clean. The goddess tells him that she can't create life because she's not that powerful, but what she can do is equalize their lifespan so that their sand runs out at the same time. The grandpa agrees, and the grandma wakes up thinking it was all just a dream. The grandma tells her husband that his clock started filling up with sand for no reason. They both promise each other to never talk about the time they have left and to keep loving each other until their last day. After Shiori goes to the festival with her boyfriend and eats her chocolate-covered banana, a week has passed and the grandma is still alive. She is very happy to be by his side and was so worried about leaving him alone that she breaks down in tears. From now on, neither of them knows how much time they have left, but when the time comes, they'll face it together. Halloween is coming up, and Manu and Shoyuta got their costumes ready to visit their grandparents. The granddaughter had explained to them that they needed to dress up, and when she opens the door, she gets so scared that she faints. At night, punks pass by the apple orchard, so Grandpa chases them. Recently, he's been patrolling for thieves, and gangs stop coming. Grandpa chases them at full speed, and despite their expert driving, he's about to overtake them. When Grandpa fixed his truck, he discovered everything was replaced except the engine, giving it serious power. Grandpa starts chasing them at full speed, and despite all their twists and turns and driving like professionals, Grandpa is about to overtake them. It turns out that when Grandpa went to fix his truck, he knew everything they put in it except the engine, so it must have tremendous power. The grandfather manages to catch up with him and pass them, and the next day, the criminals came out to declare that a ghost appeared to them at the wheel, so they will never pass through the apple orchards again. It's time for Grandpa to head back to the home club to keep his aim up, but this time a group of grandmas want to learn too. No animals were harmed, as they only used the noise to scare them away and practice their aim so they don't accidentally hit anyone. Grandmas and machine guns, what more could you ask for? On a rainy day, Shoyuta and Mino take shelter in the shrine. Shoyuta gives his coat to Mino to keep her warm, but a lightning bolt strikes, causing them to hug each other. Mino is about to call her grandparent, but Shoyuta notices that next to them are some pictures of both of them when they were young. It seems like they were just visions, and it turns out they were also taking shelter from the rain since it was the last day they could see each other because they were going to force the grandpa to get married. The grandma jumps on him to beat his fiancée to it, and Mino covers Shuta's eyes so he won't spoil what will happen when they get married. When they arrive at their grandparents' house, Mino asks Grandma Annie if she really likes going to the shrine, and Grandma says yes, but she thinks Grandpa told her about his night at the shrine. After getting cleaned up, Minu thanks Shoyuta for protecting her, feeling happy that he cares about her safety. Shoyuta is so nervous that he is considering making the first move, but seeing Mino's face, he realizes that it is not necessary. She approaches him, but it's because she's stepping out to distract her grandparents, who were behind the door listening to everything. So maybe next time, Grandma takes the train. The conductor helps her. Later, more grandmas use the train. The driver helps her since she is his only passenger, because most people prefer to get to their town by car. A few days later, a group of grandmas starts using the train. She thought of a meeting so they could use it. They still drive with Grandpa, and since there's so much snow, many cars are stuck. The driver ahead can't see. So Grandpa will rescue him as he's driven here for 40 years. Everyone gets home safely. The driver in front can't see a thing, so the grandpa is going to go rescue him because he's been driving on this highway for over 40 years. In the end, everyone makes it back home safe. Everything was covered in snow and ice, so Grandma has to chop it up. She works hard, sweating. She removes her jacket to cool down. Grandpa visits. Yoshiaki and his family help make mochi, but Yoshiaki tires quickly. Grandpa helps him avoid embarrassment, but Yoshiaki seems slow. Grandpa's snow sculptures make TV. With his daughter's family visiting, including little Kusuk, he plans a special snow dragon. The grandfather helps him so that he doesn't look bad to his wife, but when he works, his son will look as slow as an old man. Every year, the grandpa makes snow sculptures that even get featured on TV, and since this time his daughter's family is coming with little Kusuk, he thinks about preparing something special for him, a snow dragon. Shiori's family also arrives, along with the grandma's sister, who plays with her grandkids guessing poetry. Grandma Azura seems a little down, but to remember the old times, she will play with her grandchildren even though she is older. She gets the cards way too fast, but the grandparents don't believe anyone. Since the whole family is together, little Kusuk takes the chance to be nice to the grandparents, knowing that later it's time to split the New Year's money. Kusuk only gets 500 yen and 1 cent for a library pass, and he feels really sad because his plan didn't work out. Using the night continues, where men drink and women talk. This time, the mothers of the Saito family are feeling down because their lives are pretty hectic. Even Mino's mom has to work as a nurse, and the patients don't treat her well. But Grandma Annie is very understanding with all of them. She tells them that mothers aren't made of stone, since they're people too and have feelings that need to be soothed. They all share a hug, and in front of everyone, they look a lot happier. The celebrations are over, and it's time to send cards to all the family's friends. They all share a hug, and in front of everyone, they look a lot happier. The celebrations are over, and it's time to send cards to all the family friends. Since they are all older, fewer and fewer invitations are being handed out, but this year they decided to print the same postcard for everyone, and when they send them, the phone doesn't stop ringing all day because no one believes they have gotten younger. The relatives finally went back home, but little Kusuk wants to stay with the grandparent. He doesn't want to play with his dad, who looks just like him. So, the grandma gives him her precious teddy bear and tells him that they'll always be with him as long as he takes care of the bear. In the end, they say goodbye to everyone. The grandpa is so emotional that he starts to cry. Days go by, and the grandparents have a quick breakfast because they need to teach Minshuda how to take care of the apple orchard. The grandpa teaches him how to cut the smaller branches so the trees can grow bigger, and Grandpa Shuso keeps watching him and asks how things are going with his granddaughter, and for now, they even call each other by their names. It is no problem for both of them to come to work, since they promised to take care of their first apple tree, so the grandparents will leave the rest to the youngsters and go for a last walk in the countryside. They both sit down to rest in the shade of a tree. Shiori is happy with her new friend. The Takahashis came with their doctor's son, and even Yoshiaki found a job, so they have no more worries and can live peacefully and enjoy themselves as summer approaches. The weather is so nice that little by little, they start to feel sleepier. Grandpa asks if she has more wishes, but she says she has all she wanted with him. Their hourglasses run out, leaving loved one happier. When Shoyuta and Mino come for lunch, the grandparents, who live their dream, now rest in peace. 50 years later, the orchard looks untouched by time, and when Shoyuta and Mino come to get them for lunch, the grandparents, who for a brief moment lived their most cherished dream, now rest in peace. 50 years have passed since then, and the apple orchard looks radiant as if time hasn't touched it. At the top of the tree's crown, two elderly people notice that a golden apple has appeared on the tree they planted when they were teenagers. It's about Minishoda, who are wondering if they should eat the apple.